Welcome back, everyone. Hope you're doing amazing. Today we have the other Albania, the lost kingdom of the Caucasus. Kings and generals, glad you're here. I'm Shields. We do history videos. I learned about the Caucasian Albania nearly a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. And Kings and Generals put out a video in that time frame. So we kind of manifested this. So let's jump right in.
Albania. Sometimes we're asked about a state called Caucasian Albania and why it's on our maps of late antiquity. Indeed, before medieval Albania and the rise of Skanderbeg, there was another state with the same name in South Caucasus.
And the only thing I do know about it is it would live in modern day Azerbaijan today,
with no connection to the Balkans. In this video, we'll talk about the history of Caucasian Albania and describe the role it played in the Roman Parthian and Roman Sassanid geopolitical struggle, as well as its participation in the early Muslim expansion.
Do you know why thousands of people on YouTube and Patreon support us financially? Because they get history you won't find anywhere else. Videos and opinions, stories you love, positive salaries and growing the channel. Join via the links in the description, the pinned comment, or by pressing the join button under the video. Thanks for making this possible.
Alright, let's go.
The Caucasian Mountains and the Caucasus region was a geographical area defined in the ancient Greek perception as a harsh yet rich landscape, and was prominently mentioned in mythology. Prometheus was punished by the gods by being chained to the Caucasus Mountains for giving the secret of fire to the people. Jason and his Argonauts traveled to the region to get the Golden Fleece from
Yeah, that's also something we learned about recently. That was interesting.
Caucasus. Amazons were mentioned as one of the tribes living in the mountains. Generally speaking,
Really?
the Caucasus were imagined as some kind of edge of the known world by the ancient Greeks, with little credible historical description of the region. Historical sources of the late 1st millennium BC started mentioning Albanians as one of the groups populating the Caucasus. Albania is understood as a geographical region encompassing the area between the River Kura and the region now recognized as the Northern Caucasus.
Interesting why you have Dagestan highlighted here. It's still is Dagestan sovereign in the way like Somaliland is sovereign? Or is it just a like preference where it's at right here? Because obviously Dagestan's under Russia's borders. Nevertheless, let's go.
Thus, the geographical term Albania is relevant to the north of the modern state of Azerbaijan and southern parts of Dagestan of the Russian Federation.
Okay, that makes sense now.
Depending on the period, the political term Albania at times was larger than its initial geographical understanding, covering the area south of the River Kura too. We will use the term Caucasian Albania, just like is done in modern historiography, merely for the purpose of avoiding any confusion with the state of Albania in the Balkans, with which it is not connected whatsoever.
Okay.
The Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BC is the first historical event in connection with which we find mention of the Albanians in the sources.
Dang, that's a long time ago.
According to this, the Albanians fought in the army of Darius III against Alexander the Great, under the command of Atrapetes, the satrap of the Achaemenid Empire of Media. This is an indication that Caucasian Albania, as a geographical unit, was under the heavy influence of the Achaemenid Empire.
I'm guessing they were either a hemispheric vassal or they were mercenaries.
And archaeological excavations point out similarities in architectural styles.
Could be a
Direct
vassal.
mention of the Albanians appears in the 1st century BC in Plutarch's account of Lucullus's time in the Caucasus, and then Pompey's campaign in the east. The Roman sources mention the name of the specific Albanian king, Oroyses, who had fought Pompey's army in 65 BC. The early interactions of the Romans and the Albanians are also proved by the Latin military inscription on the stone in Kobustan made during the times of Emperor Domitian by a Roman centurion, which is the easternmost evidence of Roman expansion. Strabo offers a more detailed description, portraying Caucasian Albania as a rich and fertile land leading the population of the area to live a rather simple life. According to Strabo, Albanians had little knowledge of agriculture and did not use money at the time. Strabo also mentioned that Albanians were closer to nomadic stock, while being very different from other nomadic tribes. Strabo mentioned 26 local language groups, which each used to have their own rulers and had recently become united by a single king.
Okay, so they were decentralized, they become centralized, they're probably very agrarian, they also live in that gray area between that little, it's like a corridor where a lot of the people from the steppe just start to, or peoples come from the steppe into this area through the Caucasus, and usually that's like their, it's there, and it's also obviously on the other side, goodness, of the Caspian, where they will, come down and invade. However, I think it's like Oxyania or something like that on the other side. But this seems like it's going to be a blend of culture right here. It's kind of like a melting pot of east, west, and north.
This is an indicator that by the 1st century BC, Albania had already become a political unit. Strabo also wrote about the military strength of the Albanians, comparing it to their Iberian and Armenian neighbors. They fight, however, on foot and on horseback, both in light and in heavy armor, like the Armenians. They can send into the field a larger army than the Iberians, for they can equip 60,000 infantry and 22,000 horsemen.
Okay, so this is a formidable place.
With such a force, they offered resistance to Pompey. The nomads also cooperate with them against foreigners, as they do with the Iberians on similar occasions. They use javelins and bows, wear breastplates, shields, and coverings for the head, made of hides of wild animals, like the Iberians. Strabo does not mention any cities in Albania, and Pliny was the first historian to mention the capital of Albania, Kabalika, the modern-day Gabala, in the 1st century AD.
I bet you. So the modern-day Kabbalah is what he said, which most likely probably lives in Azerbaijan. I wonder how much historical buildings and areas within Kabbalah you can see like the remnants of Caucasian Albania.
Later, Ptolemy gave a list of 29 cities of Albania, including Gangara, Albana, Osika, and Kamakia. It appears that in the 1st century AD, Albania was under the heavy influence of Rome. In 36 AD, following an unsuccessful rebellion against Roman rule, Albania was incorporated into the Roman Empire as a protectorate. But while for Rome Albania was a very remote periphery, it was Parthia's immediate neighborhood, which it sought to bring under control.
And this area is like it's like a ping pong table, right? Or a ping pong ball, where you have Armenia, Iberia, or Georgia, and then you have Albania, eventually Azerbaijan. This area in the Caucasus, like historically speaking, always has been like a ping pong ball where it goes back and forth under the influence between this empire or that empire, this place or that place, and it goes all the way back to like the Soviet Union.
During the 1st century AD, Albania was under the cultural and commercial influence of their southern neighbors, proved by Parthian coins being widely used in Albania. It was the period when the branches of the Parthian Arsacid dynasty started ruling in Caucasian states. In 12 AD, Armenia started being ruled by the Arsacids, and in 189 AD, they took power in Iberia. The exact date of the start of the rule of the Arsacid dynasty in Caucasian Albania is disputed, and the course of events leading to the rise of the Arsacid dynasty in Caucasian Albania is not entirely clear. By then, another power was rising in Persia, as the Sassanid dynasty had defeated the Parthians. In the 3rd century AD, the Sasanian Shah, Shapur I, occupied and annexed Albania, Armenia, and Iberia. Shapur's trilingual inscription at Naxirostam clearly identified Albania as within the realm of the newly consolidated Sasanian Empire. The strengthening of the Sasanian Empire in the east was inevitably going to lead to another conflict with the Romans. The Romans defeated the Sassanids in the 296–299 Roman-Sassanid War soundly, following which the Treaty of Nisibis was signed. According to the treaty, Armenia was transferred to the Roman Empire, Iberia became a Roman protectorate, while Albania remained within the Sasanian Empire.
I wonder why that was. You know, obviously lines aren't arbitrary always. Sometimes they are. But there might have been more influence towards the Sassanids that lived within Albania in this case. It's already said that the coinage of Parthia was prevalent there. So it could have been, for the longest time, just a vassal state of the region. It seems that way. It seems that way.
It is plausible that while the Sassanids were recovering from their defeat, the Romans might have used the power vacuum in the region to install a friendly Arsacid king in Albania, just like the Arsacid dynasty representatives in Armenia and Iberia, who were essentially Roman proxies. The 4th century was notable for the increased official recognition of Christianity in the world. In 313, the Roman Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity in the empire, and 10 years later adopted it as an official religion of the empire. Sometime in the early 4th century, the Arsacid king of Armenia, Tudat III, officially adopted Christianity, having been converted by St. Gregory the Illuminator. According to historian Moses Kalan-Katueki, later in the 4th century, the then king of Albania, Unaya, travelled to Armenia with his dignitaries to get baptized by St. Gregory. But even before that, Christianity had already been gradually spreading in Albania.
As it did everywhere at this time.
The exact degree of dependency of Albania from the Sassanid Empire can be disputed. In the 330s, Sassanids were striving to stake their claim on the Caucasus again, and they intervened in the struggle of 2 candidates for the Armenian throne after the death of King Tudat III, with the aim of installing another Arsacid named Sanatruk on the Armenian throne. Despite formally being a Sassanid subject, the king of Caucasian Albania of the time, Vakigan, adopted a position similar to the position of Rome and Armenia. Along with the Albanian defense against the Sassanids in this episode, the arrival of the Bishop of Albania and Iberia, Gregoris, St. Gregory's grandson, for the purpose of taking steps toward institutionalization of the church in Albania and his construction of a church in the Albanian city of Kri and appointment of priests there, caused Sassanid wrath. This caused...
Yeah, well, Sassanids, Zoroastrian, I probably butchered that, is like the main language right now, I believe. So I'm guessing there's a huge conflict of interest there, obviously.
A Sassanid-supported uprising in the Albanian city of Kri against the Albanian king, and consequently led to the resubmission of the Albanian king to the Sassanids. While the Albanian king supported the Roman position, there were also pro-Sassanid elements in the Albanian nobility, a feature which was common for all 3 countries of the Caucasus. Later steps were taken to establish close dynastic ties between the Albanian Arsacids and the Sassanids, as the Albanian king Unaya was married to the daughter of the Sassanid Shah Shapur II, which was probably the start of very close dynastic relations between the Arsacid Albanian royal family and the Sassanid family, as marriage between these 2 dynasties became a common occurrence.
Yeah, be careful. Consolidation of power is pretty easy to do in this case, where one becomes both. That makes sense.
The Roman domination of the Caucasus was short-lived, as Shapur II would challenge the Romans in the mid-4th century. The sources demonstrate that Albanians were strongly integrated into the Sasanian army in connection with the siege of Amida of 359. Close by Shapur II on the left went Grimbates, king of the Chionete, a man of moderate strength it is true, and with shriveled limbs, but of certain greatness of mind and distinguished by the glory of many victories. On the right was the king of the Albani, of equal rank, high in honor.
Sometimes I lose track on these quotes, so we're going to read it. Close by Shapur II on the left went Grimbates, king of the Chionte, a man of moderate strength, and it is true, and with shriveled limbs, but of certain greatness of mind and distinguished by the glory of many victories. On the right was the king of the Albani, of equal rank, high in honor. So this is just like a notation of like a particular time. Okay.
The above-mentioned king was probably Oneir, who despite converting to Christianity, was heavily involved in the Roman-Sassanid wars on the Sassanid side, as sources mention the Caucasian Albanian army commanded by him participating in the Battle of Zirav of 371, probably with an interest of adding Armenian-controlled territories in the Caucasus to Albania. Eventually, the Romans were mostly ousted from the Caucasus, as the Sassanids were able to get the upper hand throughout the wars between the two empires in the 4th century. The Peace of Aquiline was signed either in 387 or 384, as Iberia returned to Sassanid control, while Armenia was divided between the two empires. Albania remained within the Sassanid Empire, and the entire right bank of the Kura River up to the Aras River was transferred to Albania. Probably from then onwards, Albania's degree of independence within the Sassanid Empire was on the gradual decrease. While the Albanian king was a vassal of the Sassanid Shahanshah, the Shahanshah would also appoint a Mazban, a governor, who had the ultimate political, legal, financial and religious authority in Albania. Mazban,
Just in case, right? This is just insurance. They did that for insurance purposes, most likely, so they can, have control in this region de facto, no questions asked, but keeping the traditional king there so you don't ruffle too many feathers. It's a risk to do that, but they did it, and I guess it worked.
seat was in Pator, also known as Pirozabad, following the reconstruction of the city by the Albanian king Vake in accordance with the orders of the Shahanshah. It was a major commercial and artistic hub of the region all the way until the Varangian raid on it in the 10th century. Initially, the Sassanids did not view Christianity as a threat, but the gradual spread of Christianity in the empire, along with the Roman claim of being the guardian of all Christians in the world, including the Sassanid Empire, changed this. The Sasanian Shahanshah was concerned that his Christian subjects' loyalty was to their fellow Christian Romans. In 449, this culminated in Yazdegerd II using a proclamation obliging all of the empire's Christian citizens to convert to Zoroastrianism.
Zoroastrianism, that's what it is. But yeah, that's the one of the old religions. And then all this it's crazy. It's kind of like creating a triangle here between Christianity, Zoroastrianism, and you'll have Judaism kind of like sprinkled throughout this. But then in this little bottom piece of the triangle down there at the bottom, we're going to see in like 300 years something else come out.
Albanians, Armenians and Iberians took up arms against the Sasanian Empire, and in 451, the decisive battle on the plains of Avarea, the modern-day northwestern edge of Iran, took place. The Christian Caucasian coalition was defeated, and one of the direct consequences of this defeat was a conversion of the Albanian king Vake. The Christian Caucasian coalition was defeated, and one of the direct consequences of this defeat was a conversion of the Albanian king Vake II to Zoroastrianism.
That's a big change. I bet you there's a lot of subjects that are at crossroads right there, because that's the thing, like that's just the continuous thing about state religions. They never work for everybody. They only are going to work for the loyalists, and that's going to create tension. So how many Christians are under this king? Interesting stuff here.
But as soon as Peros I took the Sassanid throne in 459, Vake reverted back to Christianity and opened the Darband Pass to the Massagette tribes and attacked the Sassanid army.
Okay, that's just a 180, okay.
In response, Peros I let the White Huns through the Darial Pass into Albania, leading to the devastation of the country. After almost 3 years of
the White Huns? Okay. Who are the White Huns? And what's the difference between the White Huns and the Huns?
Destructive conflict, Peros I offered peace. Vake II was to remain Christian, while accepting to hand over his mother, who was the sister of Peros and his wife, to the Sassanid court. After that, Vaque II withdrew from the world, and Caucasian Albania remained without a king for almost 3 decades. Only after that, the Sasanian Shahinshah Balazs decided to reinstate an Arcacid Albanian on the Albanian throne. Balazs was more tolerant towards Christianity, and the Nvarsak peace treaty between Balazs and the Armenian rebels in a way legalized Christianity in the empire once again, which allowed Vacagan III and the Caucasian Albanian Christians to practice their religion more freely. Vacagan III the Pious, son of Yezdegerd and brother of Vaque II, became the last Arsacid ruler of Albania. He was known for his zealotry and waged war against Zoroastrianism and paganism in his realm, and initiated the Aguan Church Council sometime between 484 and 488, which resulted in a 21-paragraph codex on the structure of the church in Albania, its legal status, and relationship with the state.
Okay, so this guy put a lot of reforms in. That's what I'm hearing, especially around religion.
This can be accepted as the period of establishment of the autocephalous Albanian Christian Church. We don't know how exactly the reign of the last Arsacid Albanian king, Vacagan III, came to an end, but it happened at the beginning of the 6th century. A Syriac historian of the 6th century, Zacharias Rhetor, describes the siege of Amida by the Sassanids, the capture of the city in January 503, and the pleading of the Christian prince of the country of Albania to spare the people.
So I'm guessing they just got invaded and they were taken over outright.
This person was undoubtedly Vacagan III, and the described event might have been a rebellion or some other anti-Sassanid action of Vacagan III the Pious. Movses Kalankatuaki narrates an event which might have been the end of the Arsacid dynasty in Albania. According to him, Vardan the Brave of the Maranid dynasty, the cadet branch of the Sassanids, beheaded 60 Albanian nobles at a feast, paving the way for the rise of the Maranids as the most powerful dynasty of Albania. The Maranids assumed the title of Aran Shah, the Shah of Aran, Albania. It is assumed that for more or less the century after the end of the Arsacid dynasty in Albania, the country was ruled directly by the Sassanid Mazbans.
Effectively wiping out, you could almost say like an ethnic cleansing of the Caucasian Albanians.
This was a century when Albania and the rest of the Caucasus became a ground of battle between 3 mighty empires, the Byzantine, the Sassanids, and the Khazars. The Christian
we don't talk too much about the Khazars here.
Nobility of Albania sought support from the Byzantines as their fellow Christians. In 575,
Naturally,
an Albanian delegation visited Emperor Justinian II in Constantinople, asking him to incorporate Albania into the Byzantine Empire, but this proposal was rejected, as Justinian II wanted them to remain under Sassanid rule. The next notable information regarding Albania was narrated by Movses Kalankatuaki. According to him, in the early 7th century, Albanian noblemen rebelled against Sassanid rule, but it was defeated, and rebellious noblemen, including the Albanian Catholicos Viroi, were held captive for 25 years at the Sassanid court. In 627, the Khazars invaded Albania and summoned the Mazban Semavastenus and the Catholicos Viroi to the Khazar camp, established in Uti. The Catholicos accepted the summon, and it seems that he ended up establishing good relations with the Khazars. But by 629, the Sassanids were able to oust the Khazars and re-establish their control over Albania. It seems that at the time, Catholicos Viroi was the most influential figure in Albania, due to either good relations he established with the Sassanids during his captivity in the court, or simply due to his authority as the leader of the church in Albania.
So that's an interesting. So like the leader of the church becomes the most powerful man in that realm. That's an interesting one. It's not an anomaly by any means, but it's interesting per se. Especially as it's at crossroads of the Khazars, the Byzantine, and the Sassanids. And you saw at the bottom a rising Rashidun Caliphate.
Whatever the reason, the Catholicos was behind the effective establishment of the rule of the Maranid dynasty in Albania after bestowing the title of Prince of Albania on Varas Grigor around the same period of time. This was either accepted or ordered by the Sassanid court. Less than a decade later, he was deposed by the Sassanids in favor of Javanshir, whose name meant young lion in Persian, and who had been the Shahinshah's ward in Ctesiphon and commander of the Albanian military units in the Sassanid army. Historians note Javanshir's important role in the Arab-Sassanid War during the Battle of Qadisiyah and Siege of Ctesiphon, during which he helped to evacuate Shahinshah Yazdegerd III from the city. But before the final Battle of Nahavand in 642, Javanshir understood the futility of resistance against the Arab Caliphate and returned to Albania, where he sought the protection of the Byzantine Empire.
Basically, not in exile, but as we've seen so many times in history where people abandon their homeland to go to a place that they feel more safe in. It happens more often than not when people like go from like a European state to like London or so forth. So very similar parallel here. And yeah, it was very futile, the Arab conquest. It's more or less like so crazy how like a hot knife through butter Arab conquest was. Not too much on the Anatolian side, but heavily in the on the Sassanid side,
which bestowed the title of Patricios to Javanshir and recognized him as the ruler of his country. But this was more or less in vain, as the Arab Caliphate had been able to establish control over the Caucasus by the 650s, with Javanshir accepting their suzerainty. Following his death at the hands of rival Albanian noblemen in the 680s, Albania largely ceased to exist as a polity, as it was incorporated into the Umayyad Caliphate as a single province together with Armenia. This gradually led to a weakening of Christianity and the spread of Islam into the Caucasus.
Yeah, you could still practice it, it's just, you'd have to pay a tax.
Particularly in the plains of modern-day Azerbaijan. More videos on ancient civilizations.
Well, what did we learn today? We learned about Caucasian Albania for one thing. It's obvious that they were at crossroads between the Romans and the Persians, the Parthians, the Sassanids, in throughout history, and then they met their doom, I guess you could say, to the eventual spread of the Arab conquest in the late 7th century. But it seems that they were kind of like a ping pong ball going back and forth between these realms in terms of who projects their sphere of influence there, who projects their vassalship there, etc., etc. Well, they did have some sovereignty. They did have some, customs and ability to rule on their own. It seems like it was short-lived in the relevance of the places contemporarily around them, like the Byzantines and the Sassanids. But we really don't know too much about them. That's the end of that's the thesis here. We really don't know too much about them. What was it? Just a blink in history, like a blip in history, so it warrants no more than we have? I don't think so, especially since we had from 300 BC to 680. That's 1,000 years. Think about it. That's 1,000 years of history that we're only able to conclude into 17 minutes of a Kings and Generals video. So I don't know. There's probably a lot more to dig up. If you guys have any more video suggestions related to the Caucasus and or anything in general, please drop below. As always, thank you. Have a good one. Peace out. Bye-bye.